morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's been a while since I've seen all of you guys. It's been a couple weeks. I was at St. Peter's Hope this past Sunday for a class, but it's good to see you all. And I'm going to be standing up here. I'm not as ambitious as Pastor Joey is down there. So, it's only my first few sermons. But anyway, in today's gospel reading, we hear about Jesus being tempted by the devil in the wilderness. This is a story that most of us have heard at one point or another in our life. Jesus goes into the wilderness and fasts for 40 days, and then he is tempted by the devil 3 times. I've heard this and read this story countless times. However, to be honest, I have never found this text to be very interesting. To me, it was not interesting as interesting as hearing about Jesus performing all his crazy miracles, hearing about Jesus healing the blind, feeding the 5,000, and raising the dead. These are the stories that I like to read and listen to when I was growing up. So when I found out that this was a text I was going to be preaching on this Sunday, I wondered, how was I going to preach on this text? I was going to have to talk about temptation. That seemed like the most obvious thing. This text is about Jesus being tempted by the devil. So of course, I have to preach on temptation. So what is temptation? How was Jesus being tempted in this text? When I think of temptation, my mind immediately thinks about food. When I get hungry, I always feel tempted to leave my apartment at the seminary and go over to the Wawa across the street and grab myself something like a honey bun or something like that. But that's what I think when I think about temptation. When I get hungry, I also always get tempted to procrastinate, especially on my homework, since I am seminary. So I actually procrastinated last night when I was trying to write the sermon. So we'll see how the sermon goes. But But Eileen wanted to go to Old Navy and she wanted ice cream, so that's what we did. So, this is what I think about when I hear the word temptation. I think about small things like food tempted me. This is the way that most people think. This is the way that most people think about temptations, especially in the season of Lent. A lot of people give up things like coffee, soda, social media, and chocolate for Lent. And they are afraid of giving in to temptation. However, when we read the gospel text, we can see that this is not the temptation that Jesus goes through. These are temptations that test who Jesus is. Luke's temptations are about how Jesus will fulfill his spirit-filled vocation as the Son of God. In the text, the devil is not testing Jesus to prove that he is the Son of God, even though that in the text the devil says, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread. And if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here." The devil knows that Jesus is the Son of God. Just previously in the Gospel of Luke, God says to Jesus at his baptism, "You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." It is no secret that Jesus is the Son of God. The devil is trying to see how Jesus is going to be the Son of God. No one can strip Jesus of this title. The devil comes to Jesus and tempts him to see how Jesus will live in to this title. What does it mean to be the Son of God? The devil tempts him, but Jesus does not give in. He does not turn the stone into bread. He does not go and worship the devil so that he may have the power over all the kingdoms of the world. He does not test God by throwing himself off the pinnacle of the temple in Jerusalem. Jesus could do all these things himself and show his power, but instead, he does not let himself be tempted. what would have happened if Jesus would have let himself be tempted? Would Jesus still have died on the cross? When Jesus did not give in to the devil, he chose what type of son he wanted to be. Jesus chose to be the Son of God who acts in love. Instead of showing his power, Jesus embraces his weaknesses. He embraces his humanity. Jesus could have had all the power he wanted, but he chose instead to stay weak in this world so that he might show us love. So that he can be the salvation for all the world. This is when Jesus officially starts his ministry, when he refuses to be tempted by the devil. A ministry that shows love to all people, and a ministry that eventually leads to his death, so that we may be saved. This is the role that Jesus chooses. He chooses to be the Son of God who loves. At this moment, when he refuses to be tempted, he chooses to die on the cross for us. If we look later on in Luke, when Jesus is being crucified, one of the criminals that is also being crucified with him asks him, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." Just like in the temptations, Jesus could have done what he was asked of him. He could have saved himself, but he chose not to. When he chose not to give into the devil's temptations, he chose to die on the cross. The story is now a lot more interesting to me. Hearing that the story is not just about being tempted, but that it is also when Jesus chooses to be our Savior. This story is a lot more interesting because Jesus chooses us, and this is life-giving. So what can we learn from the story? Well, sometimes the devil tries also to test our identity as baptized children of God. The devil tests us to see how we will play into this role and title. Will we use this role for good, or will we be tempted? One way to think more about this is to ask yourself, what does it mean to be a baptized child of God? Like Jesus, it is up to us to choose how we want to be children of God. We will always be children of God. This will never change. But how do we do this? Well, like Jesus, we should choose love. We should choose to follow Jesus. In this world, sometimes it is hard to follow Jesus. Sometimes we are tempted. Sometimes we get caught up in politics and in our busy lives that we forget what it means to follow Christ. Yet, one only needs to look at the cross. Look at the love that Jesus shows to all the world. Like Jesus, we might have to sacrifice things in order to show this love. And sometimes we're going to have to make ourselves weak and not be tempted by earthly power. So how does one follow Jesus and spread this love in today's world? The answer to this is that we need to make ourselves vulnerable like Jesus. We need to remember our humanity. We need to go to people who need us like Jesus does for us. It is easy in the church to get caught up in our lives and believe that we are being followers of Christ by just going to church on Sunday and giving offerings, which are both very important. And you should do those. But following Christ means going to people who need us and showing them God's love. This means going to your local soup kitchen and volunteering. This means going to the Feast of Justice and doing whatever they need help with. This also means just talking to people and treating people who are different than you with respect. This means loving people who you might not always agree with on everything. It is easy to forget to do these things. However, it is our choice to do these things. It is our choice to love. It is our choice not to be tempted. It is our choice to choose how we want to live out being baptized children of God. It is time for us not to be tempted. It is time to start our ministry. How will we choose to be children of God? How will we change in order to follow Christ? We are tempted every day by the devil. devil tries to steer us away from truly being baptized children of God. Before I end, I want to put out a few questions for all of us to think about. How can we as a church be followers of Christ and spread this love? What are the things right here in our community that we could do to spread Christ's love? What are these things? And what is tempting us from not doing them? Is our choice, like Jesus, to choose how we are going to be children of God and to not be tempted? This story about Jesus being tempted by the devil is important, and it is interesting, and it is worth listening to. Amen.